Welcome. I'm Stephen Garvey with National Citizens Alliance of Canada. We are grassroots, non-establishment, registered federal party, and we take this issue of 5G very seriously. We're concerned about the job loss, the health impacts, and the serious privacy issues. And as we've said before, this is all connected to the Great Reset, i.e., UN Agenda 2030, UN Agenda 21, and the emerging AI technocracy. So it's not about you and your family. It's about profit and control. And this isn't made up. This isn't made up. We all know about the Great Reset. It was echoed at in not too long ago during the so-called pandemic. But today we're going to go through a health report by this doctor, and we thought it really conveyed some really good points that the public should be aware of, and that Health Canada is really criminally negligent and not warning the Canadian public. So we're going to take on the role of Health Canada today, what it should be doing. Remember, Health Canada is part of the federal government, and it's controlled by the Canadian Parliament, Senate, and has an army of bureaucrats, and the upper echelon is appointed. So that's a real issue, but we're going to take on the role of Health Canada, what it should be doing, because right now it's in complete denial. It's caught up in the telecommunication agenda. But this report is excellent. And, there's a growing number of Canadians, people from other countries who've been misinformed, or they've been manipulated in thinking there's no harm. But we're going to show today fairly conclusively that there is real harm, and you should take measures to protect you and your family. This isn't made up stuff. What we're not going to talk about today is all the job loss or the privacy issues, and obviously those are very important. We may do another show on those different aspects. I think that would be something of interest. We have Adrian with us tonight. We have Tim from Vancouver. We have Maria from Vancouver joining us. And we're going to open up our social media chat line so we can see the comments you are making, so we can respond to them at the end of this. And I'm just going to get that opened up there, and then we're going to go into this report, which has a lot of really good nuggets in there of information. Going to take that down. We're going to open up our chat there. Hi, Nicholas. Thank you. Nicholas says, keep it up, NCA. Yes, we will. And we look forward to your comments tonight, Nicholas. And but this report is really interesting. One of our supporters shared it with us. I looked at it about a week ago, and there was some really good information in there that we think we should share. And this person is highly credible who's sharing it, who wrote the report. I'm going to get into the report now. And this is the doctor, Magda. She's Canadian, Magda Mavis. She's got a Bachelor of Science, PhD. She was working at Trent University, and but I'm going to go into that now. I'm just going to put up the report here and go through it. So she talks about her credentials. She goes into human effects and then the effects on nature. She talks about the guidelines, 5G. She talks about Safety Code 6. So we're going to go through the most important parts so everyone's up to speed. Magda Havas, she's recently retired 2018 from Trent School of the Environment, Trent University in Ontario. She's got a Bachelor's of Science in Biology, a PhD in Environmental Toxicology at the University of Toronto, and she did postdoctoral research at Cornell University in New York. And she's one of many scientists researchers who have spoken up about the dangers of EMF radiation and 5G. And it says here she's done 20 plus research on the biological effects on humans and natural ecosystems of air and water pollution, with emphasis on acid rain and metal pollution. I'm going to put up a link to this report so you can go through it in more detail. She's been reviewed in scientific publications, approximately 25 journals. So highly credible person who wrote this report. Okay, I'm going to go into the human studies, and these are all based on peer-reviewed scientific reviews. RF radiation or EMF radiation, quote, has been associated with cancers in people who use cell phones for more than 10 years. Tumors occur primarily on the side of the head exposed to the cell phone. And then they can include other areas, including the salivary gland tumors as well. People who live near cell phone base stations, these cell towers, radio and TV broadcast antennas, radio installations have greater risk of developing and dying from cancers than those people who live further away. And there's all the scientific studies proving that. Many of these studies show an increase in leukemias, especially among children who live near cell phone base stations and these antennas. Furthermore, those who are occupationally exposed to RF radiation, radio frequency radiation, EMF radiation, have a greater risk of developing different types of cancers. There are epidemiological studies, and such studies show an association between exposure, a surrogate of exposure like distance, and increased risk of cancer that increases with cumulative exposure. And that's what we've been warning people, is that the very deadly serious effects are cumulative. They're based on distance, and cumulative means over time exposure. We have at least 3 large multi-year well-controlled animal studies documenting MW radiation causes cancer. Several studies showing that the radiation damages DNA in rodents. There's considerable evidence that shows damages to sperm. At least 20 studies show abnormalities in sperm, which have clear implications for male infertility. At least 5 studies show DNA damage. There's considerable evidence showing that RF frequency increases free radicals by interfering with the neutralization of reactive oxygen species. Reactive oxygen species are known to cause cancer and other biological effects. And here we're looking at, this is based on sperm count. So no use. The sperm count is 86 million. Less than 2 hours a day, it drops. And then 2 to 4 hours a day, even less, then greater than 4 hours a day, all the way down to 50 million. And the viability of the sperm drops from 70% down to 48%. And morphology, percentage normal, 40% normal shape down to 18%. And this is based on a scientific study right here, 2006. And here's a conclusion. We conclude that pooled results from in vitro and in vivo studies suggest that mobile phone exposure negatively affects sperm quality. Further studies required to determine the full clinical implications of both subfertile men and the general population. In one laboratory study, reactive oxygen species were shown to reduce testosterone in rats exposed to mobile phone radiation. We have scientific evidence from both human and animal studies documenting damage to sperm, impaired reproduction, and altered hormonal levels. Radio wave sickness. It's a medical syndrome that includes poor sleep, chronic fatigue, cognitive dysfunction, including brain fog, difficulty concentration, poor short term memory, mood disorders, including depression and anxiety, chronic pain, including headaches and or migraines, dizziness, nauseas, tinnitus, heart palpitations, abnormal blood sugar, skin problems, asthma, among others. And this is from a scientific study in 2010. The scientific community has recognized these symptoms since the early to mid 1900s. And it states in one study in 1969 states that electromagnetic radiation affects the central nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, the neurohumoral systems, endocrine glands and function, eye and ocular functions, blood system, and miscellaneous organs in humans. Uh, this study, 2003, reported the symptoms of people who live at different distances from cell phone antennas. People who live closest to the antennas within 10 meters, and red right there. You see the red level? Have the highest incidence of symptoms. And the furthest away are the black right here. Have the lowest incidence. So the ones closest, they're dealing with fatigue, headaches, difficulty in concentration, memory loss, irritability, skin problems, dizziness, and movement difficulties right there. And we've had a number of people, some people have shared photos with us with skin rashes, other people having a number of these symptoms from close proximity to cell phone antennas, cell towers, small cell antennas. Uh, this is one study testing the effect of MW radiation from a mobile phone base station on heart rate variability. We did a double blind placebo controlled study with 25 human volunteers in Colorado and found that some of them developed either rapid heart rate, irregular heart rate when exposed to 2.4 gigahertz frequencies. Pretty disturbing stuff. And this is something Adrian's aware of, who's with us. This is affecting the blood when it's exposed to EMF radiation. And what we're seeing here is the red blood cells. They stick together, and in this B when they're exposed, and in A this is when they're not exposed. This can lead to involve cold, numbness, tingling in the fingers and toes, dizziness, nausea, with more severe symptoms leading to blood clots, strokes, and heart attacks. Very disturbing. And there are now tens of thousands of peer-reviewed documents on these effects. Wow. And here, this is a link to more than 6,000 documents right here. So this is a treasure mine of information in here. Yeah, they talk about its link to cancers, reproductive problems, neurological disorders, and the U.S. guidelines, which were designed to prevent only a heating effect in healthy adult males. So the guidelines in the U.S. and Canada have been completely negligent and dealing with the non-thermal biological effects. The intensity of RF radiation is measured as power density, and the units are watts per meter squared or watts per centimeter squared. And we convert them into volts per meter, which is peak signal. And they talk about that. They said the guidelines in the US are significantly reduced in stages, but are still 100 times higher than the current Russian guidelines and those in many other countries. And same with Canada. This is about the guidelines here. Yeah, and there's a link here to diabetes. Um, 30 million people in the US, 9.4% of the American population had diabetes in 2015. With so many diabetics and pre diabetics in the US, it is unwise to increase their exposure to electromagnetic radiation if this can be avoided. It's the science shows that it's ex- exacerbating the symptoms of diabetes. For those diabetics and pre-diabetics are sensitive to this radiation, it's likely to be quite costly from a human health standpoint. Wow. And that's something we've been saying. And people with the MS have found their symptoms improve when the dirty electricity in their home is reduced. I'm going to shift. And this shows the discrepancy in the funding relationship between funding source and outcome of research. And this is 2007. Industry funding, 80% no effect. Unbelievable. Look at that, the telecommunication industry. Paying for reports that show no effect. Funding not reported, you're getting 64% effect. Mixed funding, 57%. Public or charity, 45% effect. And she says some people use the term credible evidence to mislead those not experts in the field. Credible according to what criteria and according to whom? The term credible is not a scientific term, but one used by agencies and individuals attempting to downplay adverse health effects. The evidence that radiofrequency radiation is harmful to human health is overwhelming. Overwhelming. In addition to cancer, RF radiation damages human sperm, reduces testosterone levels in laboratory rats. There is an association with people living within 500 meters from cellular antennas and a decrease in hormones, which gets worse with duration of exposure from 1 to 3 to 5 years, based on a scientific report in 2012. And the Bio Initiative that we refer to a lot reviews thousands of additional documents, and we've talked about them. The impact on nature is quite overwhelming. Bee population, uh, through electrosmog, the bee population, aggressive behavior, reduced productivity, swarming, abandonment of hive, colony collapse disorder, bird populations, wild and domestic, impaired reproduction, aggressive behavior, interference with migratory birds, bird deaths. Mammals, laboratory livestock, pets. Dairy cows, reduced milk yield, altered milk quality, reduced fertility, impaired reproduction, miscarriage, deformities in offspring, infections that won't heal with antibiotics, behavioral changes, sudden death, rodents, impaired reproduction, cancers, neurological disturbances, cats and dogs, impaired reproduction, and possibly an increase in cancers. Amphibians, deformities, population decline. Plants, reduced growth, stunted roots, reduced yield, increased infections. Pretty disturbing. So this is a lot of what we've been saying. This is on the beehives. The egg-laying rate of the queen day, exposure, before, during, and after, you see the reduction. And this is 10 minutes daily for 10 days. Before, 355 eggs. During, 199, 100, and on and on. This is on the bird population, wild and domestic, going into more detail. Migratory birds, affecting their ability to navigate. And we talked about mammals, the impact on mammals, including pets. And it's talking about calves and cows let out on the meadow, grazed for only a few minutes, and then they took shelter from the transmission tower behind the stable building. Many animals squeezed with their heads the breast area of their neighboring animal. Thus, all animals ended up positioning their heads in the same direction. This is radiation of frogs, alter heart rhythm, increased heart rate, and produced arrhythmia. On and on. EMS increased tadpole mortality. These are all based on scientific peer-reviewed studies. And this is on laboratory rats, rodents, and reproduction. A progressive decrease in the number of newborns per dam was observed, which ended in irreversible infertility. Laboratory rodents and cancer. Increased incidence of malignant brain gliomas, tumors, on and on. Amphibians, plants. And we're not even talking about 5G yet. And there's some photos on the impacts of the plants. This is aspen seedlings. And you see the decay of the leaves in A versus the ones that have not been exposed in B. Wow, look at the impact on Wi-Fi on this biomass. Control the roots. Look at the root system below. And look at it there. Almost no roots. The Wi-Fi impact. So we're going to get into 5G right here. And this is this is way higher frequency. We're talking up to 10 times more frequency than what we have now at 4G. Let's say we have about 2.4 gigahertz. We could be as high as 47 gigahertz, 60, 70, 80, 90 gigahertz. And this involves 5G involves densification of small cell antennas that will be on lampposts and power lines near many homes. The concern about 5G technology is the increased levels of microwave exposure, but also the millimeter wave exposure at the higher frequencies. And obviously, they mentioned the privacy issue, facial recognition, hacking account. And we have Maria with us here. Welcome, Maria. We're just going through the 5G part right now.
Okay.
I'm going to get to the questions. There's a lot of questions we're going to go through in a second. I'm just going to finish up this pretty impressive report. I just can't believe it myself. Can you believe these people trying to say there's no harm? Trying to push the narrative that there's no harm from Wi-Fi? The cell antennas, the small cell antennas, unbelievable. I'm just going to mute you, Maria, just for now, okay?
Okay.
And then we're going to get back to this report. And they're talking about the millimeter wave right here. Deployed as a weapon called the active denial system for crowd control. Short bursts of this radiation causes pain as it heats the surface of the body. It's been tested and used by the US government for several years. Another use of millimeter waves is at airports as passengers are screened before they board the airplane. A growing number of personnel who work at these stations are reporting illnesses, including cancers. So there must be screening before you board the plane using millimeter waves. I didn't know that. Microwave frequencies are known to weaken the immune system. In the current Candy-19 demic, may be more lethal due to such a large population being exposed to 4G and 5G radiation. The immune system there, yep, excellent point. Affecting the immune system. And this is Russell 2018. Sweat glands will be the target as they act like miniature antennas to the millimeter wave. Systematic signaling in the skin can result in physiological effects on the nervous system, heart, immune system, mediated through neuroendocrine mechanisms. Some frequencies had no effect, 61 and 75 gigahertz millimeter wave, while other frequencies, 55 and 73, cause pronounced arrhythmia. For this very reason, testing is essential to identify the frequencies that are least harmful. There's a connection to cataracts in both young and old from the millimeter wave. Evidence that the immune system is impaired after a single dose, resulting in 50% suppression of phagocytic activity in healthy mice. Birth effects, and this was shown in fruit flies. Bacterial growth may increase or decrease depending on the species tested and the frequency intensity of the millimeter wave. Evidence of antibiotic resistance caused by the millimeter waves. The body's trying to defend itself from the harm from the millimeter waves. And Dr. Havas is recommended to be very careful against the harmful biological health effects to humans and other species by exposing them to the millimeter wave. And we've also, there's a U.S. Navy report, actually Russian report, 1977, that talked about respiratory issues with the millimeter wave, organ disorders, blood disorders. Very, very disturbing. Most scientists agree that 5G needs to be placed on hold, and so does NCA. We want a moratorium. And this is an excellent appeal. We actually signed this appeal, International 5G Appeal. This is on Safety Code 6. We're not going to go too much into it, but it does not recognize the non-thermal biological effects. It only recognizes the thermal effects, and they're at levels that are so high, your arm would have to be on fire for that code to have an impact. So the code is set up to protect the telecommunication industry from liability. Um, and this is coming through Health Canada and ultimately through the establishment parties and their puppets. Health Canada has been in complete denial of any of these health effects. And it says here, Health Canada does not have guidelines for electromagnetic frequencies below 3 3 3 kHz. Despite increase of childhood leukemia for residential exposure, an increase in various types of cancers with occupational exposure. And they Health Canada's guidelines between 3 kilohertz and 300 gigahertz are out of date and are based on the false assumption that only shock at lower frequencies and thermal effects at higher frequencies are important from biological. This is absolutely pathetic. Health Canada, it's a travesty. It's against public health and public well-being. It's all about profit and control. If you don't get a shock, if your body temperature does not increase, you are safe, says Health Canada. This is absurd. Once again, thousands of studies at levels well below the thermal effects document adverse health effects that are ignored. So we're just going to go through just a few more of these. The myth that safety code 6 limits only provide protection based on limited exposure for healthy adults. The guidelines does not account for vulnerable populations such as children. Health Canada fact, even a small child following a continuous exposure from multiple sources of radio frequency energy, EMF energy, would not experience adverse health effects. Can you believe that's what Health Canada is saying? And this is the doctor's comments. Where is the scientific evidence supporting this statement? I know of no study that deliberately exposed a small child to continuous RF radiation and documented the health effects. Indeed, this type of research would be ethically unacceptable. What does seem to be happening is that students in schools with Wi-Fi are complaining of ill health. Wi-Fi in schools, dangerous. And then there's a link to that. And that's why France and Russia has put a ban on it in schools. Health Canada goes on to state, while the symptoms attributed to electro-hypersensitivity conditions are real, scientific evidence has failed to demonstrate that they are caused by exposure to electromagnetic fields. Doctors comment, a double-blind placebo-controlled study showed that exposure to 2.4 gigahertz microwave radiation at levels below 5 micron watts centimeter squared affects the heart and the autonomic nervous system of those who are electrically sensitive. Completely contradicts what Health Canada is saying. Health Canada goes on to state, while the symptoms attributed to I did that. And then there's further evidence here. There's another myth here. Frequent users of cell phones, such as children and teenagers, are at an increased risk of adverse health effects caused by exposure to RF energy. Health Canada, there is no evidence that children and teenagers are at increased risk when safety code 6 exposures are respected. Unbelievable. Doctors comment, Hardell, etc., 2009, showed that young people who used a cell phone before the age of 20 had a greater risk of developing a brain tumor than did adults. Gandhi, etc., 2012, showed that radiation from cell phone penetrates much more deeply into the brain of a child than an adult. And there's a photograph showing that. Children absorb more energy than adults from the same phone. Tumors in midbrain are more deadly than those in the temporal lobe. Children's cells are reproducing more quickly than adults. Children's immune system is not as well developed as adults. Longer potential for lifetime exposure for children than adults. And the Health Canada does not recognize that children are more sensitive than adults to a variety of environmental agents, and they don't apply this concept to their RF guidelines. Myth 3, many countries have limits 100 times lower than Safety Code 6. This must mean Safety Code 6 doesn't protect my health. Health Canada, Canada's limits are consistent with the science-based standards used in other parts of the world, including the US, European Union, Japan, Australia, New Zealand. Doctors comment, countries that rely on science-based evidence recognize non-thermal effects and have much lower guidelines than does Canada. Guidelines globally fall into 1 to 3 categories: thermal, non-thermal, and precautionary principle. Canada's guidelines are thermal and are the least protective. Health Canada ignores studies, especially those that show adverse health effects resulting from RF energy. Health Canada responds when developing the exposure limits in Safety Code 6. Health Canada scientists consider all peer-reviewed scientific studies, employ a weight of evidence approach. The weight of evidence approach takes into account both the quantitative studies on a particular endpoint, whether adverse or no effect, and more importantly, the quality of those studies. The doctors comment, first, it is not possible to consider all peer-reviewed studies as there are hundreds of thousands of them. Second, Health Canada does not provide any studies upon which they relied, so it is not possible to determine which studies were omitted or ignored. And finally, Health Canada conducts a weight of evidence improperly and comes to the wrong conclusion from a scientific basis. As they state above, they consider whether a study adverse or no effects. What about studies that document a beneficial effect? How does Health Canada deal with those studies? Etc., etc. Safety Code 6 is based on the preventing thermal effects and doesn't consider other non-thermal biological effects. Health Canada scientists consider all previewed studies and consider many different potential health effects and non-thermal biological effects. The exposure limits in Safety Code 6 for frequencies belong above 10 megahertz are therefore set below the level at which heating thermal effects could occur. Harmful non-thermal biological effects are levels below the limits in Safety Code 6 have not been scientifically established. The doctors comment, if Health Canada believes that non-thermal effects have not been scientifically established, then they must have ignored all the scientific literature documenting the non-thermal effects. And many of these studies are available in the Bioinitiative Report 2012, and we've just gone through a whole bunch of them right now. So all the stuff we've been going through, most of it, Health Canada is ignoring it all the biological effects that we've been discussing today. I live and work in a major city, so I'm constantly exposed to RF energy all the time. Safety Code 6 does not account for the cumulative effects of this exposure. Canadians are protected from the cumulative effects of RF energy when Safety Code 6 is respected. Doctors comment, where's evidence supporting the statement above? Instead of providing evidence, Health Canada simply repeats their mantra, no adverse health effects will occur from exposure to RF energy at the levels permitted by Safety Code 6. What scientists are finding that the long-term chronic cumulative exposure contributing to adverse health effects, including but not limited to cancers. Ridiculous. And they don't even recognize non-thermal effects. Safety Code 6. Health Canada Canadians are protected from continuous exposure to multiple sources because Safety Code 6 is respected. Just their mantra. The reference period is not a maximum exposure time. It means that the level RF energy from all sources combined should not exceed the exposure limits. That's pathetic. Where is the evidence? Who is measuring the exposure of Canadians to ensure that Safety Code 6 is not exceeded? And the levels are so high that there's exposure that's not even Safety Code 6 does not even account for. And there's a link between radio frequency energy and potentially carcinogenic. I will get cancer due to my exposure to RF energy. And then Health Canada is claiming there's no direct link between RF energy exposure and cancer. Possibly carcinogenic. Vast majority of research. How many studies? The doctor then refutes this. How many studies are needed to justify there's a direct link between cancers and RF exposure? To date, we have dozens of studies showing association between cell phone use and gliomas that occur on the side of the head where the cell phone is placed. Rats exposed to RF radiation have greater risk of developing various tumors, etc., etc. That they're claiming the safety codes to protect humans of health of Canadians. Then the doctor says Health Canada states that they continue to analyze ongoing scientific research. There is no evidence that they recognize any research dealing with non-thermal effects. They ignore that. All the biological effects. And so there we are at the end of that report. I thought that report was pretty amazing there. We're going to look at these comments right now. There's a lot of comments. I'm going to bring Maria in there. I know you caught the end of it, Maria. It's unbelievable. But at the beginning, if you review the what we went through, Maria, it was all the effects on humans, on plants, bees, mammals, rodents. Unbelievable. Trees. And here we have Health Canada in complete denial. They're supposed to serve the public. They're supposed to put public health first. It's unbelievable. What do you think, Maria, about this?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So I posed you a question on the chat room
All right.
about are these peer review reports that Health Canada is ignoring?
Yes, they are, but they're being selective in what reports they're actually acknowledging.
Mm-hmm.
And we showed in that document that there's a lot of reports funded by the telecommunication industry saying no effect.
Yeah.
So there's thousands of reports, and they're being selective in what reports they use.
Right.
And I know in 2015 that they ignored 140 scientific reports that were presented to them.
Mm-hmm.
And and this is the truth. So, um,
Yeah, it's
this is scary stuff, because Health Canada, we're paying for that organization. It's supposed to protect public health, yet it's putting the telecommunication profit and control first. And remember, Health Canada works for those establishment parties, right?
mm-hmm.
They point the upper echelon, and there's all the bureaucrats working in there. And I'm sure some of the bureaucrats there are great people,
Mm-hmm.
and but if they speak up, they're gonna be dismissed, right?
Yeah.
They're gonna be weeded out.
What's the role of CRTC in 5G?
I don't I think they have a limited role. It's through the telecommunicate. It's through the Industry Canada and Health
Mm-hmm.
Canada,
Mm-hmm.
which are the two agencies
Because
that
they
are.
are, yeah, because they are regulatory body for communication.
They are for communication, but not for the infrastructure. That's through
Yeah.
Industry Canada in
Mm-hmm.
conjunction with Health Canada. But
Yeah.
ultimately, these politicians, establishment politicians, are writing the legislation around this. But this is going back to 1975 when Safety Code 6 came into force. We have a article on our blog on this. The International Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection
Mm-hmm.
Agency helped wrote Safety Code 6 has never been updated. It does not acknowledge the non-thermal biological effects.
Mm-hmm.
It only acknowledges the thermal effects at a very high level.
Mm-hmm. So I can see
I'm
another
gonna.
constitutional challenge coming, with
Well, it's
JCC
really
up.
tough because the system is rigged against any liability because you have Health Canada, you have
Sounds like
Safety Code
vaccines.
6, you got the International Commission, you got WHO, all saying, there's like who would only say there's possibly carcinogenic effects, right?
Hmm.
So this is what we're up against. But we could see a depopulation with this, can't we? The infertility in men and women. What's going to happen with the 5G when it's deployed at the higher frequencies? Imagine the health effects. We're already seeing them at 4G.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to happen when those frequencies are 10 times plus higher?
People will
Maria?
get sick. People will get sick.
Yeah, what will happen? I just want to look at Tim.
Yeah.
He says, just like our general health industry, supposed to watch out for us, but are basically just drug dealers for big pharma.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. And Health Canada has been linked to big pharma as well.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a book called Rotten to the Core on Health Canada by a bureaucrat who, unfortunately, who's no longer with us, but he documented the corruption there.
Yeah.
And Tim says our whole health industry is about profit and control towards big pharma. Natural doctors get nothing from the government. Good point, Tim. Vitamins literally save lives. Yeah, and apparently vitamin D is very important, Maria. It boosts the
Mm-hmm.
immune system.
Yep. I have
So
that.
that's something I take. Um,
D3 in particular,
yes, D3.
together with zinc and
Yeah,
potassium too.
Tim's saying magnesium has been the main energy supplement. Went from sweating and barely finishing kung fu class to getting through it barely sweating, traveling to multiple places across the city within. He said magnesium is actually helping him as well,
Mm-hmm.
and I've heard other people say that as well. B12, vitamin D. I'm going to go over to these comments on this page over here. Awakened World says, I just got my EMF radiation protection covers. Let us know how they're doing. I'm making copper hats too. I live by buildings 5G, so I try what I can. You have to. As the study showed, the closer proximity to these towers, the greater risk. They said within 500 meters, you have a greater chance of getting cancer.
Yeah.
Detox too is important. And he's saying here, I put it up here. In my city, they're taking old landline phones wires off in May. Look at that. So it's all going to be wireless. He wants to keep a non-smart landline. Yes. Nicholas DNA Company offers replacement landline phone. Looking phone that has big antenna in it, so that is pointed straight up in the phone. Yeah, that is ironic. DNA is so ironic for the name of a cell phone company. And it uses 3G apparently. So this is another thing to so this is looks like a wireless phone, Maria, that they're bringing out.
Mm-hmm.
That's replacing the landlines. So that's
Wow.
another concern. Five G is right outside my window. Well, that's very concerning, Nikki. Based on the scientific evidence, you are in harm's way. You're going to have to shield yourself or move. Otherwise, you're going to affect your health and that of your family. And look at this. And there's a military grade. Yes, test subjects are humans. This isn't being properly tested. That's part of 5G to use the brain interference technologies. That's another side. Maria, the
Mm-hmm.
nanoparticles. You see
Yep.
that?
Yep. In the form of vaccines.
And it goes back to 1956 also. This is very concerning, but wasn't um, the scientific evidence, like, how could anyone deny that? Like what we laid out there. But it's unbelievable. But the reason we did this presentation today was to really showcase a lot of the findings there, and
Mm-hmm.
those were only some of them.
Mm-hmm.
And Tim says I use Adeline. That's my home phone.
So how long did these studies take? Like, was it over a period of time, like 5 years?
It depends on the study. You're going to have
Yeah.
to look. They could
So this
take
was
a year, 3 years, 5 years,
right.
10 years. But
This report was April, right? April 2020.
2020.
April. Okay.
But I think it gave you a good overview
Mm-hmm.
of the health threats.
Mm-hmm.
Tim says people are indoctrinated and will only ever believe their masters. That's how they always ignore the evidence.
Yeah.
So it's really concerning. At NCA we look at the facts. Um, um, we're gonna as soon as we looked at the scientific evidence, we started piecing it together like we were convinced, Maria.
Mm-hmm.
And the most important thing is to think and avoid being subservient to the so-called masters, the fake media, a lot of these establishment politicians, they're just puppets there, and they're just going to push the establishment line, which is no liability of the telecommunication. Remember this: the bigger picture. This is tied into the Great Reset and this AI technocracy.
Yep. Sounds just like vaccines, no liability.
Yeah. There's no liability the way it's set up,
Yeah.
and Tim talks about. I must have broken at least a half a dozen indoctrinations by now in my life. So that's a good example of someone who's thinking and he's trying to fight through the control. Um, these are control beliefs, ideas that somehow penetrate his belief system. And we got Matthew here. Matthew, can you hear us? Matthew? I'm going to see if he has any have any questions.
Question.
I'm going to put a link to the report in the comment section of the video so people can take a look at it. But I thought it was a good summary, Maria. That's why I wanted to showcase it.
Yeah. So we will have a copy of it. You said the link.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to put it in the comments. Do you have anything in closing, Maria?
I can't think of anything right now, but if I do, I will let you know. Does anyone else have any questions?
I'm looking here. It looks like we've gone through them all.
Okay.
Matthew, please review what we went through. But it was quite disturbing. But then we contrasted with Health Canada, pretending that there's no harm. So we got the two different sides there.
Yeah.
Is there any
It's good
ideas?
to get the report.
Oh yeah, excellent question, Tim. Are there any ideas to stop the 5G besides destroying the towers? Well, it's a political decision. If we were in power, Tim, we would stop it. We would put a moratorium, but that's not going to happen. At least in the short term. So what we're focusing on is informing as many people as possible, but also providing suggestions for shielding, protecting yourself from the EMF radiation, whether from Wi-Fi, cell phones, cell towers. And we know right now, Maria, you don't want to be living within 500 meters of one of those cell towers. You're going to put your health, those of your loved ones, any pets you have, in serious harm way from the cumulative exposure. But when the 5G comes out, it's Maria. It's hard to quantify this but it's going to be a beam of RF radiation coming at you, Maria. You're going to feel heated from it, but there's going to be the non-thermal biological effects on top that you're going to experience. And we believe, Maria, that the cumulative effects will get reduced over time. So it may take 25 years for cancer under the microwave radiation, depending on the individual. That we believe there's a good chance that will be reduced. It could be reduced to 10 to 15 years. And then we got to factor in infertility. Yeah. What about the psychiatric disorders from it? Always going at your brain. We're looking at blood disorder, organ disorder, respiratory issues. What sort of shielding should we use? Are there any sort of supplements to cleanse the body of it? There are supplements. I'm taking one now. It's a mineral zeolite. I'm not advocating for the product. I'm just testing it out. Apparently, that mineral helps to detox, Tim. But
Can I see that again?
I'm going to put it up here. But I'm not going to vouch. Do your research. I'm not going to advocate for this. I don't know if you can read that.
Here, just hold on. Just leave it. Leave it. Leave it. Leave it. Okay. Oh, okay. Can you see the front? The front. The front of it. Oh, pure body. Okay. All right.
I'm not going to advocate for this because I'm just taking it. I'm just testing it out. It's going to be difficult for me to prove what kind of impact it's having.
Okay.
It's called Pure Body Extra Strength by Touchstone Essentials.
Okay. And for me, as a start, I'm not advocating either, but this is the Harmony pendant. Harmony pendant for EMF, RF. You got to harmonize it before you wear it. So this little pendant I have, you see it?
Yes.
Yeah. So
What's
I
it made
wear
out of?
it's gold plated.
Okay.
You have to harmonize it, but I wear it anyways at home when I'm working on the computer or whatever on my cell phone. I'll wear it anyways and try it out.
Yeah. Just be careful. We've done testing on minerals, crystals. We've seen no impact.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll try
No,
it and see if there's any
no.
improvement.
We've seen no shielding or absorption of EMF radiation. Um, we have videos, Tim, on how you can shield Wi-Fi, and but I think when you're dealing with 5G, it's a real problem because you're going to have the small cell antennas. You got all the smart devices, smart meters, the cell towers, potentially, and potentially cellular satellites. So yes, it is.
Okay.
And Nicholas, he feels so sad these days. He's awake. He sees what's going on, and he's concerned. He must be concerned. Um, um, I would recommend Nicholas channeling that energy into something positive, uh, helping us to expose what's going on, because at the end of the day, you are helping people, and that's very gratifying. But this is only going to get worse. We have to stress that. And we're going to have to document it as it comes, Maria.
Yeah.
And look out for the health impacts.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
This
you're
is
going to
more
have
of a
to.
long term. This is more
Yeah,
long term.
he's going to try and cleanse from 5G, but it's going to be challenging. Plus, then you got the privacy aspects and the employment aspects. So we got some real challenges ahead of us, and I think we're going to close it off there, Maria, because I think we've
Okay.
covered enough
Okay.
issues.
Yeah.
But
I'll get
we're
the
gonna,
report from you.
yeah, I'm gonna put it in the link right after we end the stream today. But I want to
Okay.
thank everyone. But we went through that report. It's quite very disturbing, and it's all based on scientific evidence of the
That's
impacts.
good.
So unfortunately, we got the telecommunication establishment peddling that there's no harm, but then we have independent scientific community warning of the dangers, and NCA is siding with the independent science.
Yeah.
Um,
That's good.
we don't believe what's coming out of Health Canada or these establishment politicians.
Yeah.
They're just puppets on the stage there. There's people in the background pulling their strings. Let's face it, they're all sellouts. but this is the reality of the country. Other countries around the world are going through the same thing, so we need to keep speaking up, providing the facts.
Mm-hmm.
But I know my life's improved, Maria, since I've gotten
Yeah.
informed on
Yeah.
these issues.
Yeah.
I'm able to protect myself, um, and it's really awoken me up to what's around in the environment. There's also the concern for bees, mammals, trees,
Mm-hmm.
birds, migratory birds. All that is being impacted as well. We're going to put a link of the report up, Matthew, in the comments on all the videos. We're going to go on to YouTube, Facebook, and make sure the link is there. And I'm going to do that right away. But this is a good
Okay.
summary report. I encourage people to also look at the Bio Initiative 2012. That covers so many different studies. We got a lot of information on our blog as well, documenting these different scientific studies. And that's what we base what we're saying on. We also have our on the ground experience. We've been to a lot of cell towers. I know how I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I've been exposed to pretty strong Wi-Fi. I know what that feels like. It does not feel good.
Yeah.
I'll send you a link directly right after this as well, Tim. Um, and check our blog out, Tim. We got lots of great information on there on 5G and EMF radiation. And I'm going to close it off here. I want to wish everyone a great weekend.
Okay.
And thank you for tuning in. Stay positive. Keep exposing what's going on. If there's something going on in your community, take photos, take a video, send it to us, and we
Mm-hmm.
will get it out there. We're always
Yep.
looking for that, Maria. So
Yeah.
we added
Knowledge is
you.
power.
Yeah, we added you as an editor. So
Okay.
I'm feel free to do a live video if you see something people need to be aware of.
Okay.
All right, we're going to close it off. I want to thank everyone. Stay strong. We're on a great path.